All right, I just wanted to do a little video, speaking about this topic. I speak about this, frequently, all right, because I'm one of the only people on this platform who really talks about this. Okay, I've seen a couple people over the years, but primarily I'm one of the very few that speak about this subject. Okay, which is what that these people who we call, in society, teenagers, right? They're actually, young adults, right? And I just wanted to give some thoughts on this. Okay. I was reading a book lately. I'm pretty much, I want to say 90% through it now, but Teen 2.0 by Robert Epstein, which I recommend everybody check out that book. Once again, it's called Teen 2.0 by Robert Epstein. You can find it on Amazon or read it for free on Google Play, or just go to the bookstore. So basically, this is going to be about, teenage emancipation, okay, which is what, say for an example, black folks, which, it's a little off topic, but, blacks are, the Jews of the Bible, but, this video is not about that, but, they used to say about 200 years ago or so, right, they, in America here, they were servants, right, they were slaves here in America, but then they got emancipated, right? Basically freed from, so-called freed from, that servitude, okay, of slavery. Okay, so the same thing with young people. Okay, young people have pretty much no rights. Okay, until they hit, an arbitrary number, which usually it's 18. Some places it's 21. And that's a whole nother topic of discussion, because how could you be an adult at 18 in one place, but if you get on a plane and travel somewhere else in the world, you're now a child again until you're 21. So it just shows you that it's all just something made up that somebody just said, right? It's somebody just said that it's true. There's no proof that it's true. Somebody just said that it's true, and then that's used as proof, right? That's as ridiculous as if I was to make a statement and say that, will unicorns exist? Somebody says, no, they don't. But then the proof that they do exist is I say, well, I said they exist. So see, so that's proof that they do exist. You know what I'm saying? So that just shows how, how ridiculous the average human thinks. Okay, so as far as, dealing with teenage emancipation, my proposal would be, how about instead of telling people that, well, you're not capable of handling this office, or this work, or this action until you're an age, how about we give a government administered test, right? So if this person can pass this test, well, then they can gain access to adulthood. Okay, like this test would, cover all aspects of life, personal hygiene, how to, take care of a house, dealing with children, everything you can think of, right? We'll have a very diligent test set up that challenges them about every aspect of life to see how they will, be able to hold up in those circumstances. Okay, and if they will actually be able to care for themselves on their own. And if they fail to do so, if they fail to complete the test, we'll then keep them, in childhood. However, if they can pass the test, well, why don't we allow them to be emancipated into the adult world? Why should we trap them in the teenage world, for lack of better words, right? If they can prove by doing this test that they can take care of themselves and that they can prove that they are an adult. It's like, why would that hurt to do that? And nobody knows that. They just know to repeat, well, they're just kids. Well, how are they kids? How can a 15-year-old be a kid if they can give birth to a kid? That's not logical. First of all, the word kid is a juvenile goat. You can ask any farmer that question. But as far as a human being a kid, that's just a social custom that a society came up with. That's not something that's biological, right? That's just a legal issue, which anything illegal or legal is simply the rulers of a society came together and wrote things on pieces of paper, and they called them laws, right, or rules. right? They're not actually things that are true. They're not actually, beliefs that are rooted in fact. They're just somebody made it up, right? So this whole thing about, not being an adult until you're 18, that's just a social custom, right? Somebody just made that up. That's not something that's rooted in human biology. That's just, a society's belief. And I'll give an example. The, Aztecs, Incas, and, civilizations that came before ours, right? They would sacrifice people to the gods, right? Certain people who lived, say, on Hawaii or in certain parts of the world where there was volcanoes, they would throw people into the volcanoes to appease the gods so that they don't, erupt a volcano and destroy the civilization. And you can do the research on it to prove the authenticity of such a statement. Or I believe it was the Aztecs. They would, literally tie people up and, cut their heart out of them alive, right? While they're still alive. And they would offer the heart to the gods, right? So that the gods don't get mad at them, right? Because the gods wanted human sacrifices. Now, were all of those things actually true? Were they actually appeasing gods? No, they were not. That was just a social belief that they had as a civilization, right? So it's the same with America. Everyone believes that anybody under this arbitrary number is not a adult. You ask them why, and nobody knows that. They just know to repeat, well, that's the law, that's the rules. Well, what are the laws? What are rules? All laws are, or all rules are, is simply a civilization's made-up belief. So you can't use something that's legal or illegal to, make an argument. I could also say, let's say for an example, in Pennsylvania, right, you can be put in prison for sleeping on top of a refrigerator, and you can look that up. So it's like, why is that true? How is it moral to lock somebody in a jail cell for sleeping on top of a refrigerator? And nobody knows. Well, that's the rules. So what is the morality behind it? And nobody knows. All right, which, not to, get all the way off onto that, that subject. I'll, keep it relatively simple, right? Going back to what I was saying about, teenage emancipation. It's like, well, if one can prove, at 14, 15 years old, 16 years old, they can, take care of themselves. They can provide for themselves. They can, be on their own. What sense does it make to hold them back? If they can prove by giving, say for an example, a government administered test that will test them on every field of knowledge that they have to, to know in order to be considered to be an adult. And if they can pass this test, well, why don't we allow them to be emancipated into early adulthood then? Okay? What sense does it make to hold them back? Another thing as well, dealing with, the whole age of consent thing is, which by the way, I do got to give the disclaimer out there. I'm not saying to, go out and, break the age of consent in the state that you live in. I'm just simply, pointing out, the facts, right? I'm just pointing out the facts. Okay. So, say for an example, right, if these people were just kids, right, and not capable of handling, sexual activities, well, there's a problem here. Well, why are they all doing it then? I mean, hell, back in school, man, everybody was engaging in that activity definitely by, 14, 15 years old. So if they are children and not capable of handling that type of responsibility, well, then why are they all doing it then? What logic does that make? And nobody knows that part. It's just, well, that's the rules, right? It's like, well, what logic is that being based upon? And another thing as well, when you deal with, religion, right? Because I was on the show, I called into one of the Christian live streams, right? And, was talking with them, and I asked them a question. It's like, okay, well, if adolescents, right, if they are children, well, why did God give children the abilities to make other children? And he said, well, that's not a logical question to ask. That's not a logical question to ask. It's like, well, wait a second. How the hell is that not a logical question, right? If sexual sin is a great sin in the Bible, right? Well, why would God give these quote unquote children sexual uh, um, feelings towards one another if his intention was not for them to engage in those activities. You see, it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, but you see, everybody was brought up to believe this. That's why everyone believes it, is because we were all raised to believe this. And I'll give an example. 100 years ago, you would have to go out and work, in a factory, or even during the Great Depression, you'd have to go out and get a job where you had to go out and work. And that was like, what, that was 90 years ago? Okay, so at 12, 13, you had to go out there and find yourself a job, right? Or you might not be eating. Okay, so even going beyond that, good, say 200 years ago, it was very common for people to be working at, say 10 years old. And logically, why is that wrong? Why should we be looking at the individual's age? Why don't we just look at if they are capable of handling this responsibility? And if they can prove they are, well, what logic does it make to forcibly restrict these people from these actions if they can prove that they are capable of doing so? And you see, this doesn't make any sense. Let me see real quick. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's very simple, man. And speaking for myself, I certainly know that I was a mature, responsible, young adult, certainly by the time I was 14, 15 years old. So the question is, why should I have been held back? Why could I not enter into the adult society? How was I not an adult is the question. If I could have a child, right? If I was to lay with a woman, that would create a child, right? How could I then be a child if I could be a father to a child? And you see, nobody knows that. They just all know to repeat what they've been told. But nobody could actually answer that question logically, because they would have to admit, oh yeah, well then, yeah, if you can have kids, well then that means that you are an adult. It's very simple. Say for an example, nobody would look at an animal, right, in the animal kingdom and say that, well, if they can have offspring, well then they are little ones, right? They're little, not mature, not sexually mature beings if they can have offspring, right, children of their own. Everybody would say, oh yeah, well if they can, reproduce, if they can reproduce and have offspring, well then that animal has to be a mature one. And everybody knows that, but it just, when it comes to human beings, then they add this extra stage in life, right, where you're like half an adult but half a child, right? You're sexually mature, you can reproduce and continue the species, but yet you yourself, you're not yet an adult. You're still like something in between, right? You're not necessarily adult, you're not necessarily a child, you're just something in between. And you see, it makes no logical sense. How could you have something that's in between? How could a person be a child, but yet they themselves can give birth to a child? That's not logical. Okay, but that's what everyone believes. Everyone believes that, but there is no proof of this. There is no proof. It's just, well, that's the rules. It's like, well, what are the rules? And they're just a society's belief, right? They're just things somebody made up. So all they're really doing is using something that's made up in order to, to fit their statement, right? It's very simple to see. Okay, so, in conclusion, if young people can prove that they are responsible enough to be on their own and to work and to be responsible for themselves, well, why should we restrict these people from these activities if they can prove that they are ready to engage in these activities? Right? What logic does that make? And I'll give an example, right? When I got my first job, I was with one of my friends, right? One of my friends was 14 years old. And what happened was, the man came up to us because he was looking for 2 people. He was looking to hire 2 new people to help around the neighborhood, right? Because it was just like a neighborhood job, working around, and stuff like that around the neighborhood. So he was looking for 2 people to hire. So he hired me, right? Because I was 16. But my friend, he was going to hire him, but because he was 14, he could not hire him. So my friend was deeply depressed for, a couple months because he he really wanted to work. He was very excited, to actually be able to, make money on his own, okay, and to work. But when he was told, well, you can't do it because you're not old enough, right? He didn't do nothing wrong. He was certainly capable and ready, but the only reason they couldn't let him do it is because he was not old enough, right? So he was deeply depressed about that. And it's like, oh, wait a second. What logic does it make to not let one do this just because of how old they are? And it's like on any other, for any other group of people, everyone knows, oh yeah, well, age doesn't matter. But for this group of people, it does matter though. So you see, that's just what you call hypocrisy, right? For these groups of people, well, we can't let them do these activities because they're not this age. But on any other group of people, oh yeah, well, age doesn't matter, right? Age doesn't matter. Dealing with all those other people, but for this group of people, it does matter somehow, right? That's hypocrisy. And I'll give another example. Everybody talks about, well, how can you join the army at 18, but you're not old enough to drink, right? Or to smoke cigarettes. See, that's pure hypocrisy, right? That's like, that's so stupid to believe that. But yet these same people, they'll sit there and say, oh yeah, well, 16-year-olds, those are just kids. They're just children, right? They can't be adults. But they'll let these kids, they can drive around machines that can kill multiple different people in a matter of seconds, right? They can drive around cars that is capable of mowing down multiple different people in a matter of seconds. But yet that same person who's capable of driving a machine that can kill multiple different people, they're not capable of being able to smoke a cigarette or to play a lottery card. And they will all sit there with a straight face and say that, well, no, they're just kids, so they can't smoke cigarettes and they can't play a scratch off. But yeah, they can drive around a machine that can kill multiple different people. That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine to do. It's like, what logic does that make? What logic is behind that? And nobody knows that. It's just, well, they all know to repeat it. But you ask them, okay, well, how is that true? And that part nobody knows. So it's like, as I said, man, they'd be a lot better off if we were to, allow them to enter into, adulthood early on. Okay, if we could at least give them the option, right? Because it is true that due to, being brought up the wrong way, right? A lot of them are just sitting around playing video games. But that's not all of them, though, right? A lot of them are very mature and responsible. So why should we restrict all of them just because of what some of them are doing? That'd be as ridiculous as saying, well, according to statistics, people who are 26 years old get into accidents more frequently than people who are 28 years old. So let's ban everybody who's 26 years old from driving a vehicle. Everybody would agree, well, wait, why should we ban everybody just because of what this one group over here does? That doesn't mean everybody who, is of that age is doing that, right? They'll all agree to that. But then when it comes to things such as, having a job, well, everybody under 16 is not capable of having a job. You know what I'm saying? It makes no logical sense to have that type of standpoint. It's just not logical to think that way. Everyone does. But nobody is intelligent enough to even be able to form a sentence onto why they believe that. They just know to repeat that. Say, for an example, did you know that prior to the early 1900s, there was no such thing as adolescence? People were considered to be young adults as soon as they became sexually mature. It has always been that way for all human history. Okay, that once you were, capable of reproduction, right, meaning that you were capable of continuing the species, right, you were then considered to be a adult. Okay, it wasn't until a man named G. Stanley Hall, look him up on Wikipedia, he came up with this new theory of adolescence, right, that we go through a stage of life called adolescence, as we grow from a child into being an adult. Prior to him, nobody believed that. Okay, just like for an example, with the theory of evolution, right? That came about in the mid 1800s with a man named Charles Darwin, right? But before that, nobody believed that, right? But guess what? Now, because he came up with that and gave, some quote unquote proof of that, now pretty much the entire world accepts that as being a fact. But yet, literally nobody believed that, 250 years ago, right? So it just shows you, how some of these guys, they came on with an idea and they changed the world by influencing people. Let me just grab a drink real quick. Right, so getting back to my statement dealing with the Bible, right? It's like, if sexual sin is a great sin, right? Well, why would God give children sexual feelings then? The last time I checked, the Bible says what? Be fruitful and multiply. And God said what? That man and woman can come together and create a child. I never read anywhere in the Bible. And keep in mind, I've read the Bible front to back 2 times already. Okay, and read the New Testament probably about 7 times, all right? So I've read the book, multiple times. And I never saw a verse in there that says, that children can reproduce. That's not in there, right? The Lord made a world where men and women, can come together and create a child. The Lord didn't make a world where boys and girls can come together and create children. That's not what the Lord set up, right? That's ridiculous to believe that. Okay, and another one as well. The scriptures speak about, it's better to marry than to burn. Which, what is that talking about? Guys say that's talking about hell. That ain't talking about hell. When it says it's better to marry than to burn, that means to burn with sexual feelings. So it's like, well, wait a second then. So you're saying that God made this group of people that he intended for them to burn with sexual feelings? That's what they have to be saying by logical deduction. Okay, you see, it makes no sense. And these guys will come on here and say, well, like, I'll give an example. There's a group out there that calls themselves the Sakari, right? They teach that, the Bible says that you can't engage in sexual activity until you're 20 years old. So you ask them a question, it's like, okay, well, what part of the Bible says that? And they don't know that. They just know the repeat because, well, to say otherwise is pretty weird. It's like, okay, well, where is that at? And nobody knows that part. So, yeah, man, as I said, hey, look, it's very simple, right? The information is brought out, the history is presented. And, I think I made a strong case, okay, that, this concept of, adolescence, it definitely needs to be abolished or done away with, right? So my proposal is that, how about we come up with a government-administered test where these people can take this test, and if they can pass the test, we can grant them adulthood, right? The responsibility and the freedom that comes along with being an adult. If they can pass the test, we can allow them to be emancipated into to early adulthood. Okay, as I said, it just doesn't make sense to hold people back for years of their life for no reason at all. I mean, what reason does it serve to make somebody who's capable of working at 14, make them wait another couple years? What logic does that make? It just doesn't make any sense. If they can prove it, they are ready. Well, we should be welcome them. Well, let me rephrase myself. Excuse my stutter. We should welcome them, with open arms into the adult society. And that's how every other civilization on earth have ruled. That's how they've all done it prior to America, or aka Babylon the Great. But yeah, pretty much that's just going to be my little rant. I just wanted to, share some thoughts on that because, as I said, I am one who, takes this topic dearly because, hey, look, I was one who had to suffer through this. Okay. Hey, look, I knew that I was a very responsible person when I was young, but you know what? I had to be treated as a child and restricted from adulthood. Okay. I was ready to enter into adulthood very early on. I would say 13, 14 years old. I was ready. Okay, so why should I be held back? What logic is there behind that to force me to stay back for years on end? So I fell into some great deep depressions, and just trust me, I know how it feels, man, to be, restricted. Okay, it really hurts. It really does mess you up. Being restricted from, these activities. When you can prove that you are definitely ready, the only reason you're being held back is because of how old you are. That really does mess you up, man. And I'm living proof. Okay, I am living proof of that. Okay, I really was messed up by that. Okay, so hey, look, I'm living proof. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. So I take it dearly because it's like, well, I was ready when I was a teen. I was ready. So why should I have been held back? What logic does it make to make me be forcibly held back for years of my life if I can prove I am ready to move on? And it's like, I remember when I turned 18, right? I did a video the night, as I was turning 18, right? A few minutes before I started the video. And if you watch it, right, you literally see there was no difference. I didn't change my personality, right? I didn't just become magically more mature, okay, from who I was 5 seconds before, right? You saw me on the video. I turned 18 on video. I mean, what magic happened? I mean, and if there was no magic that happened, well, by what logical deduction can one use to say that you're not an adult at 17, but when you turn 18, you are an adult? What logic can one use if I did on video, I turned 18 on video, and you can clearly see there was no difference. I was literally the same person I was when I started the video and when I ended the video. So, just it boggles the mind how one could even believe, in this nonsense. Okay, no, it really just boggles the mind. Okay, so I just wanted to do a little video about that, just to share, my experience with it. And you know what? I'm gonna go for a couple more minutes just because of my OCD. I'll let it play till exactly 30 minutes. Yeah, so I do recommend the book named Teen 2.0 by Robert Epstein. Okay, you can get some great information on this topic if you read that book. Okay, it goes into history, the Bible, modern history, okay, and how this belief came about, and how things were done in the ancient world, and as I said, I'm pretty much almost 90% through the book now, but it's a very good book, very outstanding book, and I highly recommend everybody, check that out, okay, and also you can go on my YouTube page and find a playlist. It's named the Teenage Myth, right? The playlist is named the Teenage Myth, and there's like, I want to say about 200 videos on there that are, covering this topic, okay, about how teens are actually young adults. Okay, this is this is a good topic, man. Okay, because this is this is definitely a conspiracy, right? There is definitely a conspiracy going on, okay, with this whole new stage of life, right? They made this whole stage of life up to make money because these drug companies are making hundreds of billions of dollars off of these young people being put on antidepressants. Okay, and I can speak from experience because when I was 15, I was taken to a, one of these, mental places, right? And they tried to put me on medicine, right? And here's the messed up part about it, right? The reason I was there is because I was, pissed off about the way I was being treated. And I tried to explain that to them, right? And to keep in mind, the woman I'm talking to is literally like 4 feet tall, right? So I'm there, I'm literally 6 feet tall, right? I look like a grown man when I'm 15 years old. And, she's sitting there talking down to me like I'm like a little child, and like, oh, well, if you're under 18, it doesn't matter. If your parents say you're going on medication, you are, right? So I raised my voice because I got pissed off, right? And they say like, well, see, well, he needs to be on medication because see, he's definitely something wrong with him. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, trust me, I've been there, right? I've been there. Okay, I know, but hey, the whole problem was, as I was a young adult, but I was being treated as a child, right? So, hey, look, I've been there. I've been down the path. I know. Okay, I've been one who's been deeply affected by this myth, right? By this myth. Okay, that's what I'll say. I have been one who has been deeply affected and scarred by this the myth of adolescence. Okay, so that's why I take this so dearly. Okay, is because I was one who was deeply affected. Right, I've been through a lot because of this. Right, I was certainly a mature, responsible young adult when I was young. Right, so I was being held back. From adulthood. And that really can cause some damage to you, man, psychologically. So I take it close to heart because I was one who was deeply affected by this. And you got to feel for young people because there's nowhere they can reach out, because whenever they do, it's all, well, they got to be, put on medication, right? They're just, they got something wrong with their brains. But that's a whole nother video. Okay. But I just wanted to do that little video. Well, it was actually half an hour long, but I just wanted to speak about that because I take this, topic very near to heart. So everybody go ahead and share this video, right? So we can get this message around. If anybody made it this far into the video, I want you to put hashtag myth in the comment section down below. If anybody made it this far into the video, put hashtag myth in the comment section down below. So anyway, I'm going to end the video off with that. And I hope this video was, educational and, really made you think. Okay, because it's like, why can't we let them enter the adult world early if they can prove it? They are really ready. All right, so, just leave you off with that, little thing to think about. But anyway, I'm going to say shalom.